that committee is going to want to know, can you manage the program at large? And so much about being a head coach is not about football; it's about man management, whether you're talking about coaches or players. And so let's talk a little bit about some strategies that you can put in place to help you manage those players. And the one thing that we talk about a lot in the managing off season book is building accountability and leadership and culture. And so one of those ways is to develop what we call the unit system. And it's designed to create player buy-in. A head coach can't manage 100 players alone. I mean, much less 60. I mean, a lot of you guys are working at small schools and things like that nature. But you need a tiered leadership structure, or what we call the unit system. This system is how a new head coach maintains order and consistency from day one. You can't just name captains. You got to train them. And I think that's a common misconception, is that you can't teach leadership. You can't teach culture. A lot of old school coaches would be like, "Oh man, he's just not a leader." Well, I mean, what did you teach him? Did you teach him how to be a leader? Um, that's what courses like this and books and culture books like Randy Jackson's Culture Over Leadership, Culture Over Schemes type books. So those things are great. Brian Kane, the Coffee Bean, all those kind of leadership books. If you're not reading those kind of things, man, you need to start, because you can get a nugget from all of them, no matter what the area. But you are you training up your captains. You want to select 8 to 12 seniors. You want to form some kind of leadership council, and their job is not to coach; it's to enforce culture and to manage. And one of the things we talk about in the you know winning the football offseason or mastering offseason football is that you want to go from a coach-led program to a player-led program, and this is one of the ways that you do it. These accountability groups. Each person on your leadership council has an accountability unit of 8 to 10 players. And of course, we're just assuming you have a program of 100 players. And this is where attendance, equipment care, and academic follow up happen. If somebody's not doing good, their leader's going to say, "Hey, man, look, I'm going to need you to make sure you go into class. And I heard you got in trouble in so and so's class the other day, man. Coach is going to get on us, man. We got to do that." There's no pressure, better pressure than peer pressure. And when the unit system works, your seniors are managing 80% of the minor issues, freeing you up to focus on strategy and things of that nature. Fundraising, things that you really need to be doing instead of dealing with the minor stuff. It kind of also standardizes your discipline. Shows your administrators that discipline is based on policy, not personality. So it's so hard sometimes not to be reactive in those situations. Just have that policy put in place. The freshman of the C team has got to face the same exact consequences for a violation as a star quarterback. I mean, that level of consistency is what separates toxic programs from elite ones. And, it's going to build that trust, which is so important. Kind of the next idea is that you want to become that hallway recruiter. And I can't tell you how far this really goes. Like, one of the most important days as a new head football coach is the first faculty meeting that you attend after you've been appointed, whether that's in the middle of the year, like you came over in after Christmas. A lot of guys get jobs in January and February, those kind of things. Or if it's that first meeting in August, and that's where you stand up and you say, "Hey, I'm Coach so-and-so. I'm really excited to be here. And I just want you to know that if you're having any issues with any of my guys, if you'll let me know, I'll be your number one fan," whether it's academics, discipline, those kind of things. My expectation for them is for them to sit in the front of the room, to be attentive and to be an integral part of your classroom environment. And if they're not upholding those expectations, shoot me an email or whatever I need to do, and I'll do whatever I can to help you get that fixed. That little speech right there goes a long way. And, so being that hallway recruiter is so important. And the hallway, there's a lot of different people in the hallway. Now, it's not just players. Okay, you got teachers, you got administrators and those kind of things. And that visibility is your biggest currency. And, for a first time head coach, gaining that administrative support is vital. Administrators support coaches who support the school. Be a part of the culture. Okay. You can't just be football and everybody else. You need to be at basketball games. You need to show up at a baseball game, a track meet, show up at a softball game, or yes, and even a soccer game. Show up and be around and let people know that you're not just the head football coach, but you're a part of that that school community, and that is very important. Being visible, active, and it lets people know that you're excited about not only being the head football coach, but being a respected faculty member as well. And if those teachers get on your side, they're going to help you with things like retention. You're not going to lose as many kids to discipline and eligibility because a teacher's going to email you and say, hey, look, man, Johnny's not been doing his work. He's in trouble of failing, and I need you to talk to him. And they'll flag those kids for you real quick because, to be fair, they love it. On homecoming, when a kid says, hey, Miss Jones, will you wear my jersey on Friday? And they like those kind of things. And it's a part of when they know that you got their back. More often than not, they're going to have yours. A lot of teachers are going to be like, hey, man, have you met Coach so-and-so? Have you thought about playing football? I really like him. He's exciting. Maybe you should think about doing it. So they can encourage, multi-sport athletes to join the program if they hadn't played before. And then the biggest thing is you're gaining capital with your principal. Your principal sees you as an asset to the entire student body, not just the football team. The football coaches in the cafeteria, well, number one, people ain't going to cut up because you're standing in there and you're talking to kids that normally people wouldn't talk to. And that's a thing. And you really, and here's the big takeaway of that. You can't act like you're just being bothered to do those kind of things. You got to look like you want to do them, and you should want to do them if you really, really want to make a difference and to change the culture. Because to be fair, very few of us get an opportunity to go to a place that's already working great. So take that opportunity, get that visibility, pull up that currency with your admin, because you'll need to cash it in later. The last little piece of module 2 that we're going to talk about is developing this idea of the CEO resume. Okay. So many young coaches walk into these interviews and they think that their people are actually going to talk to them about football, and they come out of there, with their heads spinning. They got these, I remember one time a guy showed me his interview packet, and I mean, it was impressive. I mean, it was professionally bound and had all this stuff. I mean, but like 75% of it was plays. Like, he had his whole playbook in there. And I was like, dude, nobody's going to look at that. He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, first of all, do you even know who's on your committee? And that's a big thing. If you can find out how many people are on the committee and kind of who it is, generally speaking, it's going to be your AD. It's going to be the principal, maybe an assistant principal. You'll have one teacher, it'll be a veteran teacher, maybe the chairman of whatever department that you're going into as a teacher. If you're PE, it'll be maybe the chair of the PE department. Maybe the basketball coach, that kind of thing. I've been on interviews where I've had students in my interview, players, student athletes that were asking questions and different things like that. So you never know, but if you can find out, that's really, really important. But you got to realize, especially if you're brand new, I was 26 when I got my first head coaching job, and I wish I would have had this course back then. It would have made my life so much easier. But the most critical step for an aspiring head coach, especially if you don't have head coaching experience, is that don't just list coaching tasks. Okay, make yourself look like that person that these administrators are wanting to hire, because the person they want is a manager, a finance director, a public relations specialist. You got to go in there and be able to quantify your administrative competence. So you want to shift from task to impact. And sometimes you got to be creative to make that sound right. But here, a task list would be like, hey, I coached the offensive line. A strong impact type thing would be, hey, I managed a $25,000 operational budget and reduced equipment loss by 15%. Well, what that really meant is that you were in charge of equipment. Every assistant has a deal. One guy does recruiting, one guy does equipment, one guy does this. You were over equipment. So yeah, instead of saying, "Hey, I coached the OL and I was the equipment manager," no, you managed. You looked at how many helmets you needed. You set up a system so where when you took up equipment, it was accounted for. You didn't lose stuff. It's just how you write it. I ran practice drills. Well, no, you developed a documented four-step conflict resolution protocol for player-to-player issues. You're talking about, hey, man, listen, Johnny and Peter don't get along, so no, we didn't do bull in the ring, but we did pull them aside. We talked to them about this. So you want to make it look like that you're a problem solver, you're a manager. It's really, really important. And when you do your portfolio, you want to do a philosophy statement, a discipline statement, a budget outline. Don't just show up with a laminated depth chart. I mean, that makes you look like a coordinator. You need to show up with a budget plan. I mean, things that you think you might need, those kind of things, and that way you look like a CEO. And that's kind of what you really are. And if everybody thinks they can do the gig, and then when they get into the gig, they realize the gig ain't what they thought it was. They thought it was just calling plays and being the dude that looked important, but you don't realize the stress that's involved with being a head coach. So that kind of concludes module one. Like I said, this course is designed to be short and sweet, just to kind of give you some little bitty ideas. In the book, we cover this stuff, way more in depth. The book's over 100 pages long. So once again, the link will be in the video below, and I'll see you in module two.